If you've ever been lowballed during a salary negotiation or a promotion conversation, you really want to hang around and watch this video because I want to share with you the one big change in your thinking that will really unlock this wide open. For those of you who don't know, my name is Anish Majumdar. I'm known as the career coach to the fiercely ambitious. What I do is I work with senior professionals, leaders who are out there and who are feeling deeply frustrated because their actual career results, like the roles that they have, the compensation, the scope and impact of what they do, is completely out of line with what they can do. And so I work with them to help them shift like their positioning, to help them change like how they're being perceived out there in the marketplace, and most of all to help them manage the steps, right, between now and that next offer, right, so that they can do it intentionally and they can do it in a way that fully corrects this. So I want to share some of that, right, some of what I've seen in these experiences, right, with over 2,100 other clients, especially as a result of this, because honestly, like I hate to see like the wrong personality types, and don't worry, you're not gonna have to be a type A personality to implement what I have to show you, okay? But it's really crazy when I see like the wrong personality types, right, get outsized rewards, whereas like the most intentional, like the most conscientious leaders, people I've ever worked with, they're the ones who tend to accept far lower, and they're stuck in this sort of mode where, you know, I've spoken to people where they'll say, Anish, like I have like a horrible pit, like feeling in the pit of my stomach when I go in there because of the bad experiences I've had with this, right? Because I know I left money on the table, I know that, and I don't know how to fix it, right? So let's start with this, okay? I'm gonna lead you through just a quick little thought exercise that I think is gonna like really illuminate this for you. So I want you to imagine for a second, okay, that you're not the candidate, okay? You're not out there vying for anything. In fact, you're in charge of hiring a new executive leader right now, right? Here's the truth. The job posting will be a whole bunch of nice generic nonsense, but the reality, right? The reality is we're completely screwed. The reason we're hiring for this is because we've lost a major client in Asia, because operations are floundering, because we're losing team members right, left, and center, right? There's all these like bleeding pain points that are actually driving this hire, right? And so I go out there and I start interviewing people, okay? And I start like looking at resumes, doing all that stuff. Cool. Same person, okay? Person one, let's call him the generalist, okay? This is the majority of brands that are out there, right? The resume is general. It might work for this role, it'll work for 50 other roles, right? It might work for this industry, it might work for many others, right? The LinkedIn, generic. The keywords, a laundry list. There's no perspective there, right? You can clearly see that this is someone professional, this is someone who has a background, but everything is blunted and soft, right? Because there's no point of view in any of it, right? So we're sharing skills. Okay, I don't know why I would be interested in that, right? We're sharing your history. Again, without context, I don't care. No one else would care, right? And at the end of the day, none of those things actually will move the needle, right? Because there's plenty of other people who have similar sounding things, and you didn't do anything to distinguish yourself. And most importantly, you didn't do anything to start addressing the real pain, to start signaling, hey, I'm not just like one of these outsiders. Like I know what's actually happening here, right? So that's the generalist, right? The generalist, if they get an interview at all, if they move through the hiring process, are inevitably going to be lowballed. Why? Because you never demonstrated an understanding of your true worth. You, in fact, communicated desperation, like just conformist sort of thinking there, and essentially offering the exact same thing that a million other people could, right? That's the problem with being a generalist. It feels safe, right? It feels like you're covering all the bases, but there is no such thing as covering all the bases in hiring, right? It's about how sharp what you're putting out there actually is and how effective it is, right? And generalism is a blunt instrument, okay? So that's person one, same person. Let's call him the outcomes-focused leader, right? What does that mean? The main point of the first contact that you see with this person, right? Usually their brand, for example, it is all about you. It's all about the number one person or the number one target or client or demographic that this person wants to engage with. And it's talking directly to their pain better than they themselves could even express it, right? So we have something here where, and I'll give you some examples of this, okay? So on the resume, right? The top third of that resume is prime real estate, okay? This is where, like, this lowball perception versus not, this is one of the most controllable aspects, and you've got to get this right, okay? It cannot be general. So I would recommend starting with something, like starting the resume with like a tight branding statement, right? Look, if you're in marketing, I don't want to hear about your marketing communications experience. I want to know, how did you spark growth? How does what you do lead in a bigger company, a larger client base, a transformation in terms of how we engage, right? It has to be about the outcome there, right? Beneath that, you want to think about a couple of bullet points that expand on that, right? And now I want you to think about your entire history through that lens, not the skills that you accrued or the job titles. How at the end versus the beginning did this company completely shift? And what was the end result of what you did that made it happen? And you're going to work back from that. You're going to work back from the outcome, right? So that you can lead with the outcome. In the resume, that's one part. In LinkedIn, right? The headline and the about section are like the really, really must-win sections. And again, right? If it's generic, the eyes are going to be blanking out before you can even think twice. I'll give you an example. Senior operations leader with a deep background in like global logistics and et cetera and et cetera. Great, that makes you feel good, right? That's a good ego play, right? Compare it with something like this. Transforming operations or future-proofing operations through a targeted process of bringing together global teams, innovative breakthrough strategies, and hands-on focus and management, right? I'm being very clear in signaling this is what you really want. You don't want to hire just another operations person. You want to hire the spark that will result in the company, the vision, the operations you've always dreamt of. And that's where I want to take you, right? That's what the headline is about, right? And the about section, right? You want to like talk directly to who you need to influence most, right? If you're looking for investment or you want to work with VC firms, right? Talk to the pain points that they have, right? Analyze it and ask yourself, like, you can even do this research, right? What are the biggest like pain points that X target is feeling right now, right? Think strategic, think like bleeding. They cannot get enough help with this. And then look for ways that you can align to those types of outcomes, right? It's that alignment with that kind of focused thinking that will really, really transform. And if you do this work on LinkedIn right, you should be seeing incoming flow from employers, from recruiters, and the rest, okay? So one last little tip I want to give you, right? As it relates to this. Because I hope like it's sort of like getting you thinking about like, you know, before I was a career coach, I had this fallacy that, you know, it's all about being like heavy-handed or something, right? And when you go into negotiate, you got to be heavy-handed. But if you do this work, you're not going to have to do a lot of that stuff, right? Because they'll come in at high levels, right? One of our recent clients, Darren, like he was making, you know, a decent amount of money, right? And but the thing that shifted him is that the first role, that like new role that he was offered, they came in almost 2x what he was making, right? That was the initial offer. So you don't have to like negotiate up when you're starting from a place that's really, really strong like that, right? So that's what I want for you guys, right? But you have to understand that in order to get that, you have to like influence this way earlier in the process. By the time you get there, or by the time you go into the promotion room, right? Like, or to meet with your boss, it's way too late. Like, it's way too late. You can't reverse engineer something at that point, right? But you can at this stage. So when it comes to the interview, right, a huge mistake I see, right, is, you know, people are asked questions, right, and you'll answer a question, right, especially like usually something about your work history or the last company that you were in, right? Sure. But they'll ask it, like you'll answer it, and then just peter off. And that's bad for two reasons. One is like, you're not like, a conversation is give and take, right? So you're giving and you're just waiting, and you're giving and you're waiting. That puts you naturally into a low sort of authority place. Not good for leaders, right? The other problem, right, with that is that the lack of specificity doesn't give you anywhere to go. Like, where do you take this conversation? Like, after the first interview, like, the only way that you can apply some pressure here is if you know what their pain points are, if you understand it. That, by the way, should be the real point of that first interview, right? I'll do a follow-up video, that'll go a little deeper into the interview process. So if you're not, I want to encourage you. I would love a follow if you would love to see more content like this. If you want to stay in my world, would really, really sincerely appreciate that. So how do you solve the interview thing? Very simple. Every time you answer a question, I want you to think about asking a question in return. And specifically, you want to go for what the relevance is. So if you're asking me a question about, like, how did I manage this global team, right, at my last job, right? I can lead you through that. Like, here's the here's the overall, here's the big challenge, right? Here's some of the actions, here's the result, that kind of stuff, right? But I'm not going to stop there. I'm gonna segue that answer into something like, I'm curious. That's what we experienced there. This is one of the things I wanted to ask you guys because, especially like looking at the crest here into the next quarter, are you guys experiencing that? And how is this coming to roost for you guys? Right? And I want to take a conversation there, right? So I want to use what I'm giving you as a liftoff point to find out how it's actually affecting you, right? And that's the back and forth that will allow you to provide the right information, but also keep it focused on outcomes, keep it focused on understanding what the secret drivers behind the hire really are, right? That's the key, okay? The person who really does this in a way that is outcomes focused to get the right kind of attention. The person who guides something like the interview in an outcomes driven way to find the pain. And then the person who uses that pain discovered to move towards the outcome is usually the person that's going to get it, right? All things being equal. So I want to just, put this in your mind. I want to get you thinking about this and get you hopefully excited about it. I did put together a free resource. It's dead simple, but it should be really effective here. It's called the Executive Market Value Tracker. Just an acronym I just came up with. But what it's meant to do, if you're interested, is it's meant to very quickly get you thinking like out of the box of my skills and out of the box of like my achievements in that limited way. And it'll get you really like looking at what you've done through exactly this kind of outcomes focused lens, right? And it'll give you some clues on exactly how to implement this stuff within your brand right now, right? Strongly recommend that no matter where you are professionally. Hope this is a big help. I hope to see you on the next one. See you guys.